Captain Jake Morrison felt sweat on his forehead as he stared at the main screen. Hundreds of alien ships appeared in space, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. The bridge of the USS Defiance went quiet. Every crew member knew what this meant. "Sir, we count 300 Zelanian warships," said Commander Lisa Parker from her station. Her voice stayed steady, but her hand shook slightly. "They're positioning themselves around our outer colonies." Jake had served in space for 15 years. He had seen pirates, raiders, and small conflicts, but this was different. This was an invasion force. The Zelanians were here, and everyone in the galaxy knew what they did to conquered worlds. The Zelanian Empire had been expanding for over 2 centuries. They moved from system to system like a disease. First, they demanded surrender. If a planet refused, they attacked with overwhelming force. After victory, they killed half the population and enslaved the rest. 37 different species had fallen to them. The galaxy had watched it happen again and again. "Get me Admiral Walsh on Earth," Jake ordered. "Priority 1. Within minutes, Admiral Kevin Walsh appeared on the screen. The old man looked tired. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Behind him, Jake could see other officers running around, preparing for war. "Captain Morrison," Walsh said. "I've been expecting your call. How bad is it?" "Bad, sir. They have enough ships to take all our outer colonies. Maybe more." Jake paused. "Admiral, what are our orders?" Walsh was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a voice that carried across the bridge. "Humanity will not bow to butchers. Transmit our message to the Zelanian fleet. Make sure the whole galaxy hears it." Jake nodded. To Lisa, she activated the communication system. The message would reach every ship, every planet, every listening post in the sector. "This is Admiral Kevin Walsh of Earth Defense Command," the message began. "Zelanian fleet, you are in violation of human space. We know what you do to conquered peoples. We have seen the burned worlds, the mass graves, the slave camps. We will not allow this to happen to our people. You have 24 hours to withdraw from all human systems. This is your only warning." The response came faster than expected. A massive Zelanian battleship, bigger than any human vessel, moved forward. Its communication beam cut through space like a knife. "I am War Commander Zektar of the Zelanian Third Fleet." The alien voice was cold and mechanical through the translator. "Humans are a young species. You have been in space for less than 100 years. You know nothing of real war. Your ships are small, your weapons weak, your soldiers untested. Surrender now, and we will allow half your population to live as slaves. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 47 species have knelt before Zelanian might." On Earth, President Mary Johnson sat in the Emergency Command Center deep beneath the White House. Around the table sat her top military leaders. General Paul Davis, head of Earth Defense Forces, Admiral Susan Wright, commander of the Space Navy, Director James Hill from Intelligence. They all knew the odds. "How many ships do we have?" President Johnson asked. 42 operational warships, Admiral Wright replied. "Plus about 200 smaller vessels, transports, scouts, cargo ships we can arm, against 300 Zelanian warships, plus whatever reinforcements they can call." General Davis leaned forward. "Ma'am, our technology is good but not better than theirs. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable, but their ships are bigger and have stronger weapons. In a straight fight, we lose." "What about the colonies?" the president asked. "New Haven has 20,000 people. New California has 50,000. New Austin has 30,000. All told, about 2 million humans live in the outer systems." Director Hill's voice was grim. "If the Zelanians follow their usual pattern, they'll kill 1 million and enslave the rest." President Johnson stood up. She was a small woman, but her voice filled the room. "Gentlemen, we've known this day might come. When we first met the Galactic Council 5 years ago, they warned us about the Zelanians. They told us to be careful, to avoid conflict, to pay tribute if necessary. We chose a different path." She walked to the large screen showing human colonies, small blue dots scattered across the galaxy. We chose to believe that other species would stand with us against genocide. We chose to trust in galactic law and justice. We were wrong. Admiral Wright spoke up. Ma'am, what are your orders? Contact the Galactic Council. Tell them what's happening. Ask for help. If they refuse, she paused. If they refuse, we fight alone. In space, Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet spread out. Zelanian ships moved toward each human colony. They worked with the efficiency of a machine. This was not their first conquest. Captain, Lisa called out. We're getting reports from other human ships. The Zelanians are jamming communications to the colonies. They're not letting anyone surrender. Jake felt anger growing in his chest. The Zelanians had lied. They never intended to accept surrender. They just wanted to make the slaughter easier. Send a message to all human ships, Jake ordered. Tell them to prepare for battle. Tell them the Zelanians are not taking prisoners. As the message spread, through the human fleet something changed. The fear remained, but now it mixed with anger. The crews knew they were outnumbered. They knew they might die. But they also knew they were fighting for something more than territory or resources. They were fighting for the right to exist. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans had nothing left to lose. Ambassador Helen Torres walked through the golden halls of the Galactic Council building. Her footsteps echoed in the massive space. Above her, the dome showed stars from 1,000 different worlds. Each light represented a species that belonged to the Council. Today, she would ask them all for help. The council chamber was huge. Representatives from 63 different species sat in their assigned seats. Some looked like humans. Others were completely alien. Floating gas clouds, crystal beings, creatures with too many arms or eyes. But they all had one thing in common. They were all afraid of the Zelanians. Helen had prepared for this moment for weeks. She carried data files, recordings, and evidence of Zelanian crimes. She believed that when the Council saw the truth, they would help humanity. She was wrong. Council members, Helen began, her voice carrying across the chamber. The Zelanian Empire has invaded human space. 300 warships are moving toward our colonies. 2 million human lives are at risk. We ask for your help. Silence filled the chamber. Then Ambassador Veltar of the Centaurian Republic stood up. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His voice was cold. Ambassador Torres, humanity has been part of this council for only 5 years. In that time, you have been warned repeatedly about the dangers of the galaxy. You were told to be careful, to avoid conflict, to show respect to older civilizations. Helen felt her anger rising. Respect? You want us to respect genocide? The Zelanians have never attacked Council worlds, Veltar continued. They only target species that refuse to follow galactic customs. Perhaps if humanity had been more diplomatic, more willing to compromise, this situation could have been avoided. Another representative stood up. This one looked like a giant insect with golden eyes. The Council cannot interfere in every local conflict. If we helped every species that made poor decisions, we would be constantly at war. Helen activated her data display. Images filled the chamber, burned cities, mass graves, slave camps, children in chains. The horror of Zelanian conquest spread across the screens. These are not local conflicts, Helen said, her voice shaking with emotion. These are war crimes, genocide, the systematic murder of entire civilizations. How can you look at this and do nothing? Dr. Amanda Foster, Helen's advisor, stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was strong. Council members, we have documented evidence of Zelanian crimes on 47 worlds. They do not just conquer, they exterminate. Half of every population is killed. The rest are enslaved. This is not war, this is slaughter. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives talked among themselves in dozens of different languages. Some seemed disturbed by the images. Others looked away. But Helen could see the fear in their eyes. Fear of becoming Zelanian targets themselves. Ambassador Theklan of the Aquarian Federation spoke next. His people lived in water-filled suits that made his voice sound hollow. The Council has a policy of non-interference in territorial disputes. This policy has kept peace for over 3 centuries. We cannot change it now. This is not a territorial dispute, Helen shouted. This is genocide. That is your opinion, Veltar replied. The Zelanians claim they are bringing order to chaotic regions. Many species have prospered under their rule. Helen stared at him. Prospered? As slaves? The debate continued for hours. Some smaller species spoke in support of humanity. The Yolans, a peaceful farming people, offered medical supplies. The Banari, a merchant species, promised to help evacuate civilians, but the major powers remained silent. Finally, council leader Mordak called for a vote. He was ancient even by galactic standards, his crystalline body glowing with inner light. The question before us is simple. Will the Galactic Council intervene in the conflict between humanity and the Zelanian Empire? The Yauper voting began. Red lights appeared on the display board. No votes. Green lights, yes votes. Yellow lights, abstentions. Helen watched as the board filled with red. The major powers all voted no. The smaller species were divided. A few voted yes, but not enough. The final count appeared. 41 against, 12. In favor, 10 abstentions. The motion fails, Mordak announced. The Galactic Council will not intervene in this matter. Helen felt the weight of those words. 2 million human lives abandoned. She stood slowly and looked around the chamber. You are all cowards, she said quietly. You hide behind laws and policies while innocents die. When the Zelanians come, for you, and they will come for you, remember this day. Remember that when humanity asked for help, you turned away. She walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. On Earth, President Johnson received the news in her command center. The faces around the table grew grim as Helen's report came through. They had hoped for help. They had believed in galactic justice. Now they knew the truth. Ma'am, General Davis said slowly, we're on our own. President Johnson nodded. She had expected this, but it still hurt. What's the status of our colonies? Evacuation has begun, Admiral Wright reported. We're pulling civilians from the outer settlements. But the main colonies, New Haven, New California, New Austin, they can't be evacuated in time. Too many people, not enough ships. And our defense plans? 42 warships against 300. We'll hurt them, but we can't win, not conventionally. President Johnson was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke in a voice that would change everything. Gentlemen, the Council has made their choice. They've decided that human lives don't matter. Very well. From now on, we fight by our own rules. In space, Captain Morrison received new orders from Earth. As he read them, his face grew pale. Then he called his senior officers to the bridge. The Council has abandoned us, he told them. We're fighting alone. But that also means we're fighting free. No Council oversight, no galactic law, no rules except the ones we make. Lieutenant Danny Martinez, the ship's weapons officer, spoke up. Captain, what exactly are you saying? Morrison looked at his crew. Good people. People who had joined the Space Navy to explore the stars and protect the innocent. Now they would have to become something else. I'm saying that the Zelanians want to show us what real war looks like. Maybe it's time we showed them what humans can do when we stop being civilized. The war was about to begin, and humanity was about to learn that sometimes monsters are necessary to fight monsters. The first attack came at dawn on New Haven Colony. Major Ryan Clark was drinking coffee in the command center when the alarm started screaming. Through the windows he could see the sky turning red as Zelanian ships dropped from orbit like falling stars. How many? Ryan shouted over the noise. 50 ships, sir, Sergeant Kate Wilson replied from her station. Big ones. They're starting orbital bombardment. The ground shook as energy beams struck the city. Buildings exploded into fire and smoke. Ryan could hear people screaming in the distance. New Haven was home to 20,000 colonists, farmers, teachers, children, people who had never hurt anyone. Get all civilians to the underground shelters, Ryan ordered. Send a distress signal to Earth, and prepare our defenses. New Haven's defense force had 12 small fighters and 200 ground troops. Against 50 Zilanian warships, they might as well throw rocks. But Ryan had sworn an oath to protect these people. He would not abandon them. The bombardment lasted for 6 hours. When it stopped, half the city was gone. Smoke filled the air like a black fog. The survivors emerged from the shelters to find their world burning. Then the landing ships came down. Zilanian soldiers poured out of their transports, like insects. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and red eyes. Their weapons fired beams of energy that cut through human defenses like paper. Ryan's troops fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed in minutes. The Zilanians did not kill everyone immediately. That was not their way. They herded the survivors into the city center like cattle. Men, women, children, old people, all mixed together in a crowd of terror. War Commander Zektar himself came down to observe. He was bigger than the other Zilanians, with scars covering his face and arms. He looked at the humans like they were insects. "You fought well for such a primitive species," he told Ryan, who knelt in chains before him. "But now you will learn why resistance is futile. Your people will watch as we demonstrate Zilanian justice." What happened next would haunt the galaxy for years to come. The Zilanians began selecting people from the crowd. The young, the strong, the healthy. These would become slaves. The rest would serve as an example, but the Zilanians made a mistake. They took their time. They wanted to savor their victory, to break human spirit completely. They did not know that help was coming. Admiral Carol Bennett commanded the Third Fleet. 15 human warships racing through space at maximum speed. When the distress signal from New Haven reached her, she made a decision that would change everything. "All ships, this is Admiral Bennett." Her voice crackled across the fleet communications. "New protocols are now in effect. We are no longer bound by Galactic Council rules of engagement. These aliens want to see what humans can do in war. Let's show them." Captain Sam Rodriguez commanded the USS Vengeance, the fastest ship in the fleet. He had lost friends on New Haven. His brother lived there with his family. As they approached the colony, Sam's hands tightened on his command chair. "Admiral," he called over the comm, "request permission to engage the enemy." "Granted," Bennett replied. "All ships, attack pattern Delta. Target their landing ships first. Do not let any of them escape." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, directly above New Haven. The Zilanians were caught completely by surprise. They had expected reinforcements, but not this quickly, and not with such fury. Sam dove his ship straight into the heart of the Zilanian formation. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Tony Garcia, fired everything they had: missiles, energy beams, projectile weapons. The USS Vengeance tore through 2 Zilanian transports before they could react. But the Zilanians recovered quickly. They were experienced warriors, veterans of dozens of conquests. Their heavy cruisers turned to face the human attack, their massive weapons charging up. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human ships were smaller and weaker, but they fought with a desperation that shocked their enemies. When the USS Liberty's engines were damaged, Captain Maria Santos rammed her ship directly into a Zilanian battlecruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. On the ground, the Zilanian commander watched the battle with growing concern. These humans were not following standard galactic warfare protocols. They were fighting like cornered animals, throwing their lives away for minor tactical advantages. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "they're targeting our landing ships. If we lose those, we cannot retreat." Zektar snarled. "Then we finish this quickly. Begin the executions. Show these humans the price of resistance." The first group of prisoners was forced to their knees. Zilanian soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, something unexpected happened. The human prisoners fought back. Major Ryan Clark had managed to work his hands free from his bonds. As the soldiers prepared to execute a group of children, he lunged forward. His hands closed around a Zilanian weapon. Without hesitation, he turned it on his captors. The prisoners scattered as a firefight erupted in the city center. Human colonists, armed with captured weapons, began attacking their guards. It was chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that humans understood. In space, the battle reached its climax. The human fleet had lost half its ships, but they had destroyed most of the Zilanian landing force. Admiral Bennett's flagship, the USS Constitution, engaged Zektar's command ship in a deadly dance. "All remaining ships form up on me," Bennett ordered. "We're going to finish this." The final assault was brutal. Human ships, damaged and burning, threw themselves at the remaining Zilanian vessels. The USS Defender, with only life support working, drifted into a Zilanian cruiser and detonated its reactor. The explosion lit up the sky like a new sun. When the smoke cleared, the Zilanians had been defeated. But the cost was terrible. 13 human ships destroyed, thousands dead on the ground. New Haven was in ruins. Captain Rodriguez landed his damaged ship near the city. As he walked through the wreckage, he found Major Clark sitting among the bodies of his people. The man looked broken, hollow. "We won," Ryan said quietly. "But look at the price." Rodriguez knelt beside him. "The price would have been higher if we had lost. The Zilanians would have killed everyone. Would they?" Ryan looked up at him with haunted eyes. "Or would they have just enslaved them? At least slaves are alive." Rodriguez did not answer. He could not, because deep down he was beginning to wonder if they were becoming the very thing they fought against. The war had begun, and humanity had won its first battle. But victory, they were learning, came with a cost that went beyond ships and lives. It came with a piece of their souls, and this was only the beginning. The massacre at New Portland changed everything. Colonel Jack Williams arrived 3 days too late. His ships dropped out of hyperspace to find the colony burning. 25,000 people had lived here. Now there were only bodies and smoke. Zilanians had not been quick this time. They had taken their time. The survivors told stories that made hardened soldiers weep. Children murdered in front of their parents. Families burned alive in their homes. Old people tortured for sport. The Zilanians had broadcast it all, sending the recordings to every human world as a warning. Jack walked through the ruins with Lieutenant Sarah Davis at his side. She was young, barely 25, but her eyes looked ancient now. Both of them had seen the recordings. Both of them had watched their people die in ways that defied imagination. "Sir," Sarah said quietly, "what are our orders?" Jack stopped, walking. In his hand was a communication device. On it was a message from President Johnson. New rules of engagement, no restrictions, no mercy. Show the galaxy what humans could do when they stopped being human. "Sarah," he said slowly, "how many Zilanian worlds are within range of our fleet?" 17, sir. Most of them are military outposts, but 3 are civilian colonies. Good. Jack's voice was cold as space. "We're going to visit all of them." The first target was Zek Prime, a Zilanian mining world with 2 million inhabitants. It was not a military target. It was simply the closest Zilanian planet to human space. Jack's fleet arrived without warning, just as the Zilanians had done, at New Portland. The orbital defenses were light. The Zilanians had never expected humans to attack their homeworlds. Jack's ships destroyed the defense platforms in minutes. Then they began the bombardment. But this was not the careful, precise bombardment that human forces usually conducted. This was something new, something terrible. Jack's ships targeted everything: power plants, water treatment facilities, hospitals, schools. Within hours, Zek Prime was dying. "Sir," came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving surrender requests from the surface." Jack looked at the planet below. Fires burned across continents. The cities were dark, their power grids destroyed. "Ignore them," he said. "Continue bombardment." Lieutenant Davis stared at him. "Sir, they're surrendering. The Galactic Council rules of war." "The Galactic Council abandoned us," Jack replied. "They chose neutrality while our children were murdered. We don't follow their rules anymore." The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it stopped, Zek Prime was a broken world. No power, no communications, no clean water. The survivors would face starvation and disease, just like the humans at New Portland had faced death and torture. But Jack was not finished. He had 16 more worlds to visit. Captain Mike Thompson commanded the USS Retribution. His target was Koltar, a Zelanian research station where they developed new weapons. The station was built inside an asteroid, protected by thick rock and heavy shields. Mike's solution was simple. He loaded his ship's cargo hold with nuclear warheads and flew straight at the asteroid. At the last moment, he and his crew escaped. In life pods while the ship crashed into the research station, the explosion cracked the asteroid in half. 3,000 Zelanian scientists and soldiers died instantly. Their research, gathered over decades, was vaporized. Mike watched from his life pod as debris scattered across space. "This is for New Portland," he whispered. Major Karen Lee led ground forces on Velnara, a Zelanian supply depot. Her orders were simple: destroy everything, take no prisoners. Soldiers followed those orders with grim determination. The Zelanian garrison surrendered after 2 hours of fighting. They laid down their weapons and raised their hands, expecting to be treated according to galactic law. Instead, Karen's troops executed them where they stood. "Ma'am," Sergeant Bob Foster said, his voice shaking, "some of them are trying to surrender." Karen looked at him with eyes like ice. "The Zelanians didn't take prisoners at New Portland, neither do we." The war escalated beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Both sides abandoned every law, every custom, every trace of civilization. Zelanian ships began targeting human civilian transports. Human forces responded by destroying Zelanian hospital ships. When the Zelanians used biological weapons on New Austin Colony, Captain Danny Martinez unleashed experimental chemical weapons on 3 Zelanian worlds. The toxins turned the atmosphere poisonous. Plants died, animals mutated, and the survivors faced slow, painful deaths. Ambassador Helen Torres returned to the Galactic Council chambers 6 months after the war began. But this time, she was not asking for help. She was delivering a warning. The chamber was nearly empty. Many species had fled to distant systems, afraid of being caught between 2 civilizations that had gone completely insane. Those who remained looked at Helen with fear and disgust. "Ambassador Torres," Council Leader Mordak said, his crystalline body dim with worry, "the Council demands that humanity cease these barbaric attacks immediately." Helen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Barbaric? These are the same tactics the Zelanians have used for centuries. The only difference is that now they have an enemy who can fight back." "You are destroying entire worlds," Ambassador Veltar protested, "killing millions of innocents." "Where was this concern when Zelanian forces were killing our innocents?" Helen asked. "Where was the Council when we begged for help?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered that day 6 months ago when they had voted to abandon humanity. "The war must end," Mordak said desperately. "Both species are destroying themselves. The galaxy cannot survive this level of violence." Helen's expression grew cold. "The war will end when every Zelanian world is a graveyard, or when every human is dead. There is no middle ground, no negotiation, no mercy." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Council Leader? Any species that provides aid to the Zelanians will be considered our enemy. Any species that interferes will share their fate." As Helen walked out, the Council members sat in stunned silence. They had created this monster. By refusing to stand against evil, they had forced good people to become evil themselves. The war continued for another year. Entire star systems became battlegrounds. Both the Zelanian Empire and human space became zones of death where no other species dared to travel. In the end, there were no winners. The Zelanian Empire was reduced to ash and ruins. Half of human space was destroyed. Billions were dead on both sides. The galaxy's 2 most dangerous civilizations had torn each other apart. Captain Jake Morrison, now an admiral, stood on the bridge of his flagship above the ruins of the Zelanian homeworld. His crew was silent. They had won, but victory tasted like poison. "Sir," Commander Lisa Parker said quietly. We're receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They want to discuss peace terms. Jake looked at the dead planet below. Once, it had been home to 8 billion Zelanians. Now it was a radioactive wasteland. Tell them we'll consider it, he said, after we finish sterilizing the outer Zelanian colonies. The galaxy had learned its lesson too late. When civilized people are abandoned to monsters, they become monsters themselves. And sometimes monsters are the only things that can survive in a universe without justice. Earth had warned the galaxy. Now the war truly had no mercy.